afternoon, everyone. I'm Stuart Waldman, president of VICA, Valley Industry and Commerce Association. We are so excited to have you here today, excited for our guests. This is going to be a great program. Looking forward to it. And I have the pleasure of introducing Marty Adams, who's going to kick everything off. So, Marty, it's all yours.
Thank you, Stuart. Can you hear me okay there? I'll take that as a good sign.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marty Adams. I'm the General Manager and Chief Engineer at the LA Department of Water and Power, your LA Department of Water and Power. And we're really proud to be a presenting sponsor of today's event. First, I'd like to thank all of you for attending our VICA Congressional Office Holders Luncheon. You all know this is a great event every year, and we're glad to see everybody back. It says I have a minute to give a shameless pitch about Department of Water and Power. So I just want to take a second and remind everyone that, there's a lot of really interesting things going on as we change our water and energy mix for the city, become greener in what we do, looking for more local water supplies. But, you overlap that with what we see going on with the climate. Extremely dry year this year. Governor put out a drought announcement asking Californians across the state to save water above and beyond what we've already done. And we see the hot weather. My gosh, the last couple of days with the humidity has been up and it's just not cooling down. And it reminds us how important it is to be efficient in all that we do. And for those of you who haven't taken advantage of our programs, I want to remind you that we have a lot of programs to help both businesses, residents to save them both water and power, reduce your usage, reduce your bills. We have a lot of rebate programs. We have technical assistance programs. Whether you're small or big, we can come and help. LED lighting programs, a lot of things that we can do to really assist you, to really help us to really set the city up for a successful future, use less energy, use less water, and become more efficient, and then also help you to control your bills. So if you haven't had a chance to go online, look at our website, go to DDP online and check out the programs we have, get involved with us and see what we can do to help you in the future to help control your bills and control your usage. And we also want to remind everyone to be careful with their water and energy use over the course of the summer. It's going to be hot and dry, but we have to make it last. So, well, back to our luncheon. So a year ago, we did this virtually, and it was a new idea. It was kind of fun. We all figured out this remote platform. And a year from now, we'll be back in person, and it'll be a whole lot more fun to see everybody again. And I want to take this opportunity right now to thank the sponsors of today's events, the people who have continued to support VICA throughout the pandemic. Whether we're alive or virtual, they're still there for all of us. And certainly, besides ourselves, our other presenting sponsor is Comcast, NBC Universal. I'd like to thank them very much for the continued partnership with VICA. Also, our co-sponsors include Amazon, 5 Point, Healthnet, the Los Angeles Daily News, Pharma, the Boeing Company, and the Garland. And we want to thank you so much for your support of this event today. And I'd like to thank also our other sponsors for today's events, which you can see the program that was emailed to you and posted online. All the sponsors are listed in there, or you can go on the platform after the program and check out the sponsors. So today we are joined by Congressmembers Mike Garcia, John Garamendi, Jimmy Gomez, and Brad Sherman. And we really thank them for their presence today and for their continued support of VICA by participating in this important event with everyone, where we can talk to them personally and really hear what they have to say. And so we'll be bringing them up on the stage, virtual stage shortly, for some great time with Q&A. And before we get started, I want to remind everyone, as always with the VICA event, we always have a raffle. And we have a round trip ticket anywhere that Southwest flies, and a $50 Brent's gift card at the end of the program. And as always, you have to be present to win. So make sure you stay to enjoy the entire program and wait for the raffle at the end. So now let me introduce our first moderator today, Allison Barnett from Healthnet. So Allison, take it away. It's all yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Marty. I think my mute button went away, so I will assume everyone can hear me. So honored to be, Healthnet is so happy to be a part of this event today, and I am excited to welcome Congressman Brad Sherman. Mr. Sherman, why don't you take a couple of minutes to give some opening remarks, and then we'll get to some questions.
Hello, I'm Brad Sherman from America's best named city, Sherman Oaks. For 25 years, I've represented most of the San Fernando Valley in the United States Congress. Now, I know most of the people on would like to spend at least the next hour, 15 minutes talking with me about everything that's going on in Washington. And that We will indeed do that, but it'll be on July 21. We have our next telephone town hall. And we've done a series of these since the pandemic, and I think this will be our 5th or 6th this year. To participate, you go to bradsherman.house.gov. That's for House of Representatives.gov. And you'll see our town hall information. You can submit a question, or you can just get the information about how to dial in at 7 p.m. on July 21. For 25 years, I've worked with VICA. And, whenever I go to an organization, my staff gives me a list of all the other involvements we've had, meetings we've gone to with the organization. This one went on for 5 pages. And I know that we have members who don't have the great joy of living in the San Fernando Valley, and they're jealous. They may not tell you, but they're jealous that their communities don't have something as important, as well organized as VICA. And I especially want to thank Stuart Waldman for his, it must be decades of work with VICA. And I want to commend VICA for speaking to the folks that are drawing the new city and county boundaries for councilmen and supervisorial districts, to say the valley is the valley. The San Fernando Valley is the biggest thing in this country that isn't its own city, its own county, or its own state. And in fact, we're larger than 7 or 8 states. And sometimes we have to draw the line when they're drawing the lines and make sure that the valley has its representation. Now, with me on this Zoom is Scott Abrams, who heads our Constituent Service Office. I want to put in a plug for his work. Imagine a federal agency makes a mistake. Yeah, it could happen. It could affect you. Could be Social Security, Small Business Administration, the IRS. You call Scott. Scott and his team work very hard. They solve your problem. And I, Brad Sherman, take the credit. If your business or your home happens not to be in my district, then you can call Tony or Mike, and it works the same way. Their staff works very hard. They solve your problem, and then I, Brad Sherman, take the credit. So that part works the same way no matter where you live. In particular, passports. Get your passport renewed now if it's anywhere close to expiring. The State Department is backed up. They're crazy. It's a bottleneck. And you may win this Southwest drawing. And I think Southwest flies to Mexico and Canada. You'll need your passport. Is it up to date? In addition, we're doing a lot of work with visas, business visitors coming in. And finally, you have the PPP loans. You've gotten the loan. Now it's time to get it forgiven. And that process is working smoothly for a lot of people. But if you need our help, don't hesitate to give us a call. The phone number is 818-501-9200. And we look forward to helping businesses around the valley, because when we help a business, we don't just help one person. We help that entire enterprise. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. We have time for a couple of questions. So, and thank you for all that great information. I made a note here to check my passport dates. I'll do that this afternoon. Congress saw the return of earmarks this year in the form of community project funding. Tell us what community projects are your priorities for the San Fernando Valley and why?
Well, we've just gotten approval at the committee level, and I think this is pretty much the key step. For money for the Valley Economic Alliance, which many of you are familiar with, that helps businesses in the valley, for tree people to plant thousands of trees, particularly in the parts of the valley, in the North Valley, that have suffered fire damage. And we need to get fire-resistant trees up there instead of what the invasive species that are now there. I think a lot of you are familiar with the work of El Proyecto del Barrio, and I want to help their Winnetka Clinic, New Directions for Youth, and their training in North Hollywood of people of kids that face challenges, particularly on computers. Hope of the Valley Rescue Mission, it does so much for the unhoused. Cal State Northridge, We're seeking park improvements to Warner Center. I know Brad Rosenheim will like that, and also park improvements in the Sepulveda Basin. And then, in addition to what's being discussed as community projects, because those are new, or at least new over the last 10 years, we also have the transportation projects, which Congress has always been involved in. As to those community projects, I should point out the bureaucrats are still going to make 99% of the spending decisions. These projects are well less than 1% of the amount we're spending. And I'll put my knowledge of the San Fernando Valley up against most of the bureaucrats in the federal government when it comes to selecting priorities. As to transportation, we need the studies that will hopefully lead to a rail through the Sepulveda Transit Corridor. Was able to get $10 million for that. Also to deal immediately with the 405 through the Sepulveda Pass. Maybe we can, it looks like they can squeeze another lane. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they tell me they can. And then we've got a bridge in Burbank, charging stations at the 5134 interchange, and traffic signals, other improvements in Tarzana, Sherman Oaks, and Northridge. But the most important thing, and the $7-8 billion project, is rail through the Sepulveda Pass, because that is the biggest bottleneck, perhaps in the entire country. And the number of cars that go through there is like triple the Golden Gate Bridge, and the delays are like triple the Golden Gate Bridge. And I don't see how you can have a successful mass transit system in Los Angeles if you leave out the San Fernando Valley. So that's what I'm working on when it comes to local spending.
Well, that's great. Your constituents have a lot to be excited about. I would expect that in your over 2 decades of service on the Foreign Affairs Committee, you've developed something of a long view of U.S. foreign policy. Tell us, what do the Hamas rocket attacks and the Israeli response mean for both Israel and the Palestinian people, and how will this affect the larger U.S. policy towards the region?
I think in the long history, this will just be one of a series. And you go back 2 years, you go back 6 years, you saw similar attacks. I think that the only answer is a two-state solution. The Israelis have become a little reluctant, but what isn't clear is how the other side has totally rejected a two-state solution. The slogan of the BDS movement against Israel is "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." Now, what they really mean is Palestine will be Juden-free. I realize that's a German word, but the program is the same as that once carried out by Germany, and that is to make the region to expel all Jews from the Holy Land. That's an extreme position. As long as the other side has that position, it's very hard to see how you're going to negotiate a two-state solution. The Palestinian Authority says they accept the two-state solution. So I talked about the Hamas. There's 2 Palestinian entities. Hamas in Gaza, and I just described their position. And then there's the Palestinian Authority on the West Bank. Their position is fine, there can be 2 states, but any Arabic-speaking person who claims, and there are no records, that they or any of their ancestors ever lived in Israel gets a right to move there with their entire extended family. So the Palestinian Authority, which seems like the more moderate of the 2 Palestinian organizations, takes the position that there can be 2 states as long as they're both Arab states. I don't think that. I think once both sides accept the idea of a 2-state solution, then it comes down to the toughest real estate deal any of the lawyers on this call have ever done. But until you get there, if the position of one side is "you shall not exist," then it's very hard. As to the recent events, there were some 42 to 4,400 rockets. Every one of them was a war crime. The purpose of every rocket was to kill as many Israelis as possible. And the fact that with Iron Dome technology developed by the United States and Israel, thousands of civilian deaths did not occur, does not absolve those who are trying to create as many deaths as possible. The Israelis had to respond. You can always go back and say, well, you could respond a little bit differently this way. Your bomb hit this building. You should have gone after that building. But the fact is, this was an attack to kill as many Israeli civilians as possible, not because Israel had done anything to the West Bank or Hamas, but because of a rent dispute of half a dozen families in Jerusalem that didn't want to pay rent, though they never bought the property. And, I was a lawyer once. I've been involved in rent disputes. I've never rocketed my opponents. Go on.
Thanks. So I hear the financial world is growing concerned about the London interbank rate, or LIBOR. As I understand it, by June of next year, the London interbank rates will no longer be published. What does this mean for the trillions in home mortgages and business loans with adjustable interest rates that are keyed to LIBOR? More importantly, what can we do about it?
Well, the good news is we have till 2023. The bad news is there's $200 trillion of instruments. But the good news is that 95% of those are taken care of in one or two ways. Either they're short-term instruments and they'll expire before the Brits stop publishing the London rate, or the instrument itself says, hey, if the London rate isn't published, take the T-bill rate and multiply by 0.938 or whatever it is. And so 95%. So that only leaves us with a $5 to $7 trillion problem. At that point, I still think that's an important problem to solve. And I think everybody on this call is familiar with an adjustable rate mortgage. And it starts by picking an index. And as that index goes up or down, your interest rate goes up or down. And that might be based on, well, what is the rate being paid on 10-year U.S. government bonds? Or in many cases, it's what is this London rate, which is no longer going to be published. And so we need to specify how to calculate the interest on those instruments. That includes not only the home mortgages, but an awful lot of business loans as well, some private student debt, and a host of other instruments. And so I've taken the lead in the House to propose a solution. Needless to say, everybody who has anything related to LIBOR perks up. So that's a $200 trillion world. And they all want to, they immediately have anxiety in the corporate suite and then their representatives in Washington. So I've got to overcome that and say, look, 95% of you don't have a problem. And the bill I'm working on is not designed to tell you what to do in the future. So if you don't like what I'm doing, fine, don't put it in your instruments. Come up with some other, But if you have in your portfolio an infirm instrument, an instrument where in 2023 people don't know how much interest is supposed to be paid, then do you want me to fix it or do you want to litigate it? I have some class action lawyer friends who choose the second. You tell me what you want. So it's because it's big and it affects the small banks, the large banks, the medium-sized banks, the securities, etc. Everybody's got a reason why, yes, the problem should be solved, but oh my God, don't do it that way. And we have to run the traps and hopefully have a solution, or my old homeboys in the legal profession will make a lot of money.
Sounds fun. Addressing climate change or a global pandemic requires international partners. It's clear that even our global rivals need to be partners sometimes. In this vein, talk to us about China as a necessary partner or potential adversary in addressing these global concerns.
It's easier to identify the problems than the solutions, but we have 5 different issues with China. One, everybody on this call knows about, and that is trade practices, and intellectual property. We're running the largest trade deficit in the history of the world with China, and that does matter. For every $1 billion in trade deficit, that's another 10,000 jobs that could have been in the United States. We don't really have access to their markets. One concern I have, both culturally and economically, is their control on the number of films that go in. They allow about 44 films in. And so what does that do? Well, first of all, it hurts us economically. That's the second biggest film market for our studios. And an awful lot of films aren't even displayed there, can't even get in. And nobody would say that we should limit China to 44 electronic products or 44 different types of shoes or something like that. The second thing is it gives them cultural control. Because if you're a studio head and you want to make a movie about what's happening to the Uyghurs, you say, okay, I know China isn't going to let that movie in, but we'll market it elsewhere. And then one of your executives comes in and says, no, boss, if we make that movie, not only will that movie not get into China, none of our movies will ever get into China. So they control free speech here because of the economics and their ability. So a second area is human rights. They've got 1 million people in camps in Sichuan, Hong Kong, etc. The third is their aggressiveness militarily, South China Sea, East China Sea, and of course, the possible invasion of Taiwan. A fourth area is their very inadequate contributions to solving global warming. They are building every 10 days a new coal-fired plant. And I know they're not building them with the idea of decommissioning them a few years later. And then finally, I'd like to get to the bottom of COVID. It's clear we could have done a better job in the world if China had been more open. I don't know whether it came from the lab or the wet market or the here or the there, but I do know that they wouldn't let us know. So we've got these 5 different issues. This is going to be difficult. I have been advising those businesses that listen to me to look for places other than China, and particularly India, for places to do business, because there's a sixth problem I haven't mentioned, and that is the Chinese government, while it looks very powerful now, is built on sand. Every government has to explain to people, why are we running things? Now, you can have the divine right of kings, worked well, King Henry VIII, that's why I'm running things. You can be the Ayatollah in Iran, convince people the Quran says you should be running things. Lenin claimed to be the vanguard of the proletariat, as did Mao. Well, that's why they're running things. The Chinese Communist Party is not the vanguard of the proletariat. I don't know how many billionaires are members, but once you have over 4 billionaires as members of your party, you are not the vanguard of the proletariat. And so as long as they maintain high economic growth or nationalism and aggression, they may be able to hold power. Now, more power to them. If they can they've run their country pretty well. Of course, they started from a ridiculously low base. If they maintain that high rates of growth, hopefully by internal growth, they can stay, that answers the question. But if not, then this government is going to have to do what it's already beginning to do. And that is say, shut up, we're running things, and you have to let us because we're at war, or we're at semi-war, or we are the great nationalists. Nationalism is the last refuge of scoundrel politicians. I should know. I've been hanging out with politicians for a long time. And I expect that we will see a much more nationalistic China in the years to come. The day of when their policy was grow slowly and quietly is over. They are assertive, and they have to be in order to build their popularity with their own people. But ultimately, India is a democracy. The U.S. is a democracy. Now and then we've got people I don't like running things, but at least I know why they're running things. We've got an electoral college. There it is. Okay. This government, if they ever do face an economic downturn, will have a hard time surviving because they can't answer that question. Why are we running things? Saying that my grandfather was part of the vanguard of the proletariat really isn't much of an answer.
Well, Mr. Sherman, it has been a pleasure. Thank you for coming by today. We really appreciate it. And now let me introduce Kathy Benuelos from Comcast NBC Universal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, we're having technical difficulties, so we are going to bring up Cameron Onuma from Amazon. We're moving a little ahead, and we'll come back. But thank you so much, Allison. And
thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. And hello, everyone. Allison, that was great. Congressman Sherman, it is your insight about what's happening in the world and in Washington, D.C. My name is Cameron Onuma. I'm on the board here at VICA, and I also am on the team at Amazon. I'm actually coming to you live from our facilities here in Culver City, and it is my pleasure and my honor to be joined by one of the newest members of Congress, certainly one of the newest members of the California delegation, Mike Garcia. Congressman, I'll turn it over to you for some introductory remarks, and then I got a couple of questions for you.
Well, thank you, Cameron, for the introduction and the association for having me back. I don't have, 50 pages of notes like my colleague, Mr. Sherman, has from our long relationship. It's been a calls. I think August 18th, you're doing something after hours there that we're going to be able to get together and meet each other in person in Burbank, I believe. So looking forward to that. I'm glad you all are here. I'm glad you all have survived the lockdowns and been able to keep most of your businesses going and intact, keeping the folks employed. This PPP and the IDL opportunity work on and truly work to many businesses and their employees in the midst of pandemic, and I thank you all for doing what it took to make sure that you kept your doors open and kept your folks on the books and recovering. And I think we're going to see a pickup here. And now we have literally jobs looking for people, which is another problem. We need to figure out how to incentivize people, how to get them back to work, how to get them off of some of these programs and start earning the paychecks again. And I know a lot of you are challenged right now with hiring opportunities, and we can talk about that as well. As Cameron said, I'm one of the newer members. I've only been in office for about 14, 15 months. Actually, Brad Sherman introduced me on the floor the day I was sworn in. And it's been a wild ride, as you can imagine, being in office as a freshman, now technically a sophomore during the pandemic. In the midst of an election cycle, and then all of the drama over the last, call it 6 to 9 months. It's been a wild ride. I remain focused on just taking care of our constituents, doing what I think is best for the nation and the interest of our Constitution. When we took office, my district office had actually not been staffed for about 5 months because my predecessor resigned about 5 months before I was sworn in. So our real priority here in the district was making sure that we took care of those constituents who had issues with the federal government. Various federal agencies, whether it's the VA or the IRS, getting help to those who are desperately in need of it, especially in the pandemic. And I'm so just proud of my team. We have closed just for veterans 263 case files just for veterans alone, and in the last year we've closed about 1,200 constituent case packages in just the 1 year there. So that's doing God's work, the work of the constituents, and that is absolutely a priority. The atmosphere right now in Washington, D.C., I would say is starting to get back to normal. I understand the fences are coming down. While I've been in office, I've only had the opportunity of being on the floor with all the other members for the last 2 weeks without restrictions on attendance and wearing masks and certain voting times. And so I'm finally starting to get a glimpse of how Congress operates and what it actually looks like on the floor. We are getting back to normal. There are bills coming through committees now, and I sit on the Appropriations Committee, which is a powerful committee to be on. It's something that it will benefit the 25th district And those of you who aren't familiar, the 25th district is Simi Valley, which is where I'm located right now. Porter Ranch, which is the northern edge of the San Fernando Valley, and then Santa Clarita Valley, Acton, Agua Dulce, as well as the Antelope Valley. So a large district geography-wise, about 750,000 folks. And we do have a lot of transportation and infrastructure needs as well. So being on the Appropriations Committee is a fantastic opportunity, and it's an honor to be there. And we're starting to make sausage, as they say, and starting to see that firsthand with the budget bills coming together here over the course of the next couple of months. I'll make some remarks about earmarks, just like my colleague, Representative Sherman did. I do support earmarks. This is something that, you know, depending on both sides of the aisles have antibodies to earmarks. We call them member designated projects or community-based projects, whatever you want to call it. They are effectively earmarks. And I agree with Brad's assessment. There is no one probably more responsible with your taxpayer dollars, especially in our respective districts, than your representative in the House. We're accountable to the voters every 2 years. We know our districts well. We know where the money is going to be most effective. I don't want bureaucrats, and I don't want folks on Pennsylvania Avenue making decisions in our district, especially with this kind of money. And it's important to note, these aren't additional dollars being added to the budget. These are a very small percentage of our annual operating budget that is actually being carved out of the existing president's budget request and being utilized for these member-directed funds and member-directed projects. So we have been successful with about $20 million worth of these projects just in our district. This does support the districts around us. Obviously, a lot of the folks who work in your businesses, maybe in the San Fernando Valley, live in Santa Clarita or the Antelope Valley or Simi Valley. So these infrastructure bills are important across district lines as we allow people to move and ultimately be able to live a little bit better. And we've got several critical infrastructure projects that we're supporting to include rail, highway, and some issues around national security assets in our district. So I do support those things. Those are moving forward, and I'm confident we'll be able to move the needle in a very positive way. My focus from a legislative perspective is just trying to make sure we can try to keep Californians in California. We are seeing a mass exodus. We're losing a congressional seat as a result of our population growth not keeping up with other states over the last 10 years. This is a symbol of folks being frankly overtaxed, overregulated, and having some challenges in a state where we shouldn't have challenges. This is the most beautiful state in the nation. I've been around the world. I've seen the globe, and I can tell you that this is God's land here, and we want to stay here as long as we can. And I think the people moving to Florida and Idaho and Texas are going to regret it. They're going to end up wanting to come back. To that end, we're doing things from a legislative perspective to try to make life a little bit easier for Californians. I wrote the HR 202 bill, which is the state and local tax deduction limit removal. This is a straight up removal of the SALT cap so that we can actually deduct our state and local tax dollars to the full amount that we're realizing those burdens. That's not fair to Californians. This limit's not fair to New York, California, some of the states that are creating the most wealth and generating the most tax revenue at the macro level for the nation. And we shouldn't be artificially handicapped by these deduction limits. So that will likely go through. It may not have my name on it, just that's the nature of politics in DC right now. They may copy paste it, put someone else's name on it. That's fine as long as it gets passed and we do something good for Californians. That's not typically something that most fiscal conservatives would advocate for, but I do recognize this is something that we desperately need. We've also been leading this illegal marijuana grow out in the Antelope Valley. This is something that has been making the news lately. We just led an operation. This was my office and my staff driving this and working with Sheriff Alex Villanueva. But we confiscated about $1.2 billion in street value of illegal marijuana. These are illegal farms in the Antelope Valley that are being led by cartels, being staffed by primarily indentured servants who are not here legally, they're not documented, in many cases working against their will. We have a lot of details about what been seized. These are, in many cases, bad actors. And this is a fight against illegal marijuana farm, but it's not that. This is about making sure that our natural resources are pillaged. And these illegal marijuana grows are consuming roughly 3 million gallons of water per day in a time where we have, one of the worst droughts that we're going to be experiencing over the next few years, it looks like. So this isn't something that is just an Antelope Valley problem. It's a security issue, but it's also a natural resource issue. And once this water is used, it doesn't come back. As you know, this is literally lowering the water tables around us in the LA Basin, and that's a massive amount of water. So we're fighting that fight. Several other fights as well that we're trying to take care of folks. And it's all in the interest of security. Hopefully, in the few times we've met, you guys know that for me, this isn't about the Republican Party versus the Democrat Party. This is about security and making sure that that we can continue to survive in California. I want low taxes. I want low regulation. I want to support the police. I want to make sure our neighborhoods remain secure. That the lights turn on when we want them to, and that the water's clean when we need it. And we have those challenges, unfortunately, in this beautiful state.
Congressman, you have been,
that's what we take care of. So
you've been keeping quite busy over the last 18 months, and we appreciate that. Got a couple of questions for you from the VICA team, and I want to start with something you already alluded to in your opening remarks, which is back in April, you sent a letter to Governor Gavin Newsom, right by California's small business owners, and swiftly provide comprehensive relief. As an advocate for small business, what is your plan for relief and aid as we recover from the COVID-19 crisis?
Yeah, and honestly, from a federal government perspective, there's shoots of hope in terms of bipartisanship. This PPP program was a success. The Flexibility Act surrounding PPP was a success. I was encouraged to see not only the amount of money allocated to small businesses during the shutdown, but also the number of loans allocated as well. And it was a broad and deep lifeline like we talked about earlier. We're at a point now where there's several $1 trillion worth of relief aid out there. There are still industries that need help. The restaurants, for example, are an industry that still desperately need assistance, but their business is picking up right now as well. The challenge, the feedback that I'm getting from my constituents and the small business owners around us right now is that all of those programs were appreciated. They do want to get back to normal. They do want to get their lights turned back on and get business back online so they can recover. And we're starting to see good growth in terms of consumption, both on the demand side and just macro growth. The challenge that we're having right now for most businesses that I'm visiting is that they're not able to hire people to come actually service the demand. And so the supply side of things right now is extremely limited, and you're seeing that, in massive price increases in resources like timber, but also, these hiring signs on every business. So two things to answer your question directly, Cameron. We still need to get the relief effort to targeted industries. There are industries that are suffering because their supply chains are lagging, and they can't actually meet the demand and get solvent and recover from the shutdowns. The second thing is we've got to incentivize people to get back to work rather than sitting at home. Some of these unemployment incentives were very needed for a long period of time, and I think we're beyond that. I think the risk of COVID has been mitigated. We're seeing the mortality rates get to the point where we should all be getting back to work and earning the paychecks, and that back. The demand is there. There's a lot of cash right now to reflect all of that we need to do.
Congressman, if I may, and you alluded to this when you were talking about illegal marijuana farms, but crime is on the rise. It's on the rise in Los Angeles County. It's on the rise nationally. Can you speak to what can be done at the federal level to address the increase in violent crime, financial crime, all kinds of crimes that are going on here and in other places?
Yeah, great question. This is something that we need to work together. I don't care what party you're in. This is a problem for all of us. And just to give you an example of what Cameron's talking about, guys, over the weekend, the 4th of July weekend, we had 12 homicides in the LA County area. This is a marked increase over the last few years. In my opinion, this is a direct result of this defund the police movement. They literally did defund the police in this last couple budgets at LA County. The supervisors there are doing a disservice to the communities. And they're dissolving task force as a result of that. In my district, we've lost the Youth Activity League task force. We've lost a good chunk of the gang task force, the violent crimes, the drugs task force. So what can the federal government do to get to your question is we can help, and I'm on the Commerce, Justice, and Science subcommittee on appropriations committee, which is, so this is literally where the money for law enforcement funnels through from the federal government. We need to help local law enforcement by augmenting them through federal grant programs, and we're doing that actively. In this marijuana drug bust that I was talking about, we were able to get roughly $500K, about $500,000 to the LA County sheriffs, and get them an additional 50 DEA agents to support them. It's a national problem. It's not just a county problem, and we absolutely need to make sure that we're defending police right now and not defunding them.
So I'm going to ask you a selfish question, a fun question. I'm from Amazon. I got to ask you, what's the best purchase you've made in the last year?
Well, I don't remember if we made it through Amazon or not, but let's pretend like we did. It was a deck of cards, actually. I don't think families spend enough time around the dinner tables anymore. And while we were literally shuttered in, my election was in May, my special election, and in the month of April and March, it's hard to run for Congress when you're shuttered in and no one can literally leave their homes. But every night we would sit around the table, and my family and I, my boys and my wife Becca, would play cards. And to be honest, those were some of the most precious moments that we've had as a family. And it's amazing how something so simple like that can bring us together. And I think we need more time like that to just sit around and maybe play cards as a family and good times.
I think that's right. Congressman, thank you this afternoon. I know you'll be with us next month on August 18th in Burbank for our in-person VICA After Dark. Don't forget your Hawaii shirt. I don't own one, so I think we sell those on Amazon.com though. So
thanks, Cam. I appreciate the opportunity. We'll see you guys there after dark during the day, but we'll stay late so it is dark by the time we leave. And looking forward to meeting y'all. Thank you.
Okay. Folks, I now have the privilege and honor of keeping this program going and introducing a colleague and one of the sponsors of today's program, Kathy Banuelos from NBC Universal. Kathy, I'm looking forward to getting out to City Walk and the theme park soon, and you'll have to show me all the new cool things you guys got going down there.
Definitely, and I got very excited when I heard you say in person for our next event.
Lucky us.
I also wanted to thank Congressman Mike Garcia for his comments. I want to also plug Universal Studios is hiring. So if any of you have relatives or friends who need a summer job, seasonal jobs, we have lots of openings at Universal Studios and at City Walk. So plug for the park there. We're very excited to be sponsoring this event, and I'm very excited to be welcoming Congressman Jimmy Gomez to the virtual stage. Hopefully we can get some cheers and claps in the virtual chat going for Congressman Gomez. It seems like, yeah, see?
I heard it. I heard it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for that kind introduction and that warm applause.
So, it feels like a lifetime ago since VICA did a trip out with other business organizations in March of 2020 in DC. And I can only imagine what's been going on since then. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to make some introductory comments, tell us what's been going on this past year, and then I'll ask you a couple questions.
Yeah, Kathy, good to see you. And, it's good to be back with VICA, even though it's virtual. It's been a heck of a year, just like everybody is saying, right? With the pandemic, with the economy shutting down, with people having stay-at-home orders, and just the upending of our way of life. And it taught a lot of people a lot of different lessons. And that's everything from the fact that our social safety net is not as strong as people once thought. It was not as robust, and it had a lot of holes, and it didn't keep up with a changing economy. My office really focused on the last year in the midst of the pandemic. I never stopped traveling to DC. I was there when I would be at LAX, and I think there was 3 of us in the terminal. There would be 5 of us on a plane. So we saw the devastation it had just across the board. But one of the things that we focus in my office is how do we, what I told my staff is that we shouldn't focus on wants, right? When people were calling, hey, we want you to vote like this, or we want you to do this. I said, we got to focus on needs, because that was where people were at. They were struggling to make rent payments. They were struggling for food. They were struggling for childcare. They were struggling just to take care of their family members and one another. So we wanted to focus on those need. And we did that, and we got some big things done. Last year when it came to the CARES Act, we got some money out. But then we learned a lot of lessons when it came to just the amount of the hit that the economy took and the American people took. So we focused on a lot of things. One, rent relief, getting people money in order to keep their stay in their homes was a big deal. My district, I represent downtown LA, the east side, as well as Koreatown and Pico Union, and we saw people just struggling. People at the higher ends of the economic ladder were doing a lot better, right? With the rising stock market, people were taking off. They did a lot better. And it wasn't easy, but when you had access to a good Wi-Fi connection or to cable, you could work from home, they did well. And you saw that in our states, when our state took steps to think that we're going to have a huge economic crisis, they took steps to cut the budget in preparation. But then what people revealed is that people could work remotely, did, and oftentimes the ones that were using paid a lot of capital gains, you saw their incomes increase. So that's why you saw this just influx of revenue to the state of California. But we're proud of what we've done. It wasn't exactly what we wanted all the time when we were negotiating President Trump, but we did what we had to do in order to come to an agreement. And so did the Republicans. It was not always 100% what they wanted, not 100% of what we wanted. And then we got to implement the American Rescue Plan under Joe Biden. And that's where it took a lot of our attention, was how do we make a plan that's really works for the working class in this country. And a key indicator is that you saw under the American Rescue Plan, you saw an increase in the income of the 20% lowest wage earners in this country, and a 0% in the top 1%. Under the other bills that we passed under Trump, you saw actually a significant increase for the top 1% of income earners in this country. So we changed the dynamic. We had some great things in there, but everything from the refundable child tax credit, that's going to cut child tax poverty in half by 45, almost half of 45% will be reduced in this country. You also have more money going to restaurants, businesses. You saw just a huge influx, and it's really popular. Even though it got zero votes by the Republicans, it actually has about a 73 to 75% approval rating across the board. And now Republicans are actually taking credit for a lot of the provisions that were in the American Rescue Plan. So, but that was then. Now we're focused on how do we kind of restart our economy in a stronger way? How do we make the recovery more equitable? How do you invest? That's infrastructure, right? That's the traditional roads, bridges, transit, water, you name it. It's kind of the physical. And that's the bipartisan plan that was passed. And then there'll be a budget reconciliation part that includes more of the soft infrastructure, the human infrastructure, workforce development, housing that a lot of people who are traditionalists don't view as infrastructure. So we're going to be working on both of those pieces of legislation simultaneously, and hopefully we'll get it passed by September, October at the latest, and that's the goal. We can't let these one-time stimulus just end. We got to really take this opportunity to build an economy that works for the 21st century for all people, and we have to make sure that we have a government that learned the lessons of the pandemic and implements it through these pieces of legislation that we're trying to get passed.
Thank you, Congressman. I actually wanted to follow up on a couple of things that you touched on in your comments. One was that you mentioned the child tax credit, the expanded one. If you can embellish a little bit more about what that means for families, specifically families in the district, and what it took to actually get that done.
So the child tax credit is something that has been around, and it was Republicans under their tax plan that expanded the child tax credit. But the way it works is that you have to owe a tax liability in order to be able to claim the tax credit. So it was I believe it was about $2,000 or $2,500 that they expanded it to per child. And it wasn't fully refundable. If you didn't owe money to the IRS, you couldn't claim that tax credit. Even if you had children, even if you're working class, you couldn't take advantage of it. So we restructured it to make it fully refundable, which means that it doesn't matter your income. So we fully refundable below $75,000 and $150,000 per married couple, and $112 per head of household. For every child, they will get a total of $3,500 per child under the age of 6, $3,000 per child from 7 to 17 years of age. But instead of like most people don't, instead of waiting till you file your taxes in order to get your child tax credit, instead of waiting till the next year, we made it so that we're dividing the payments up equally starting July 15th. So starting next week, money will be going out. So each parent will get $250 to $300 per child if they're under those income thresholds. That's a huge deal because I don't know, most people are working class, don't have bills that can wait a whole year, right, to get paid off. So this is going to be a big deal. Economists say that it's going to have a transformative effect, cutting child poverty by half, as I mentioned, and it makes people think about, how do we use tax credits to help the working class? The stimulus checks that everybody is talking about, those are fully refundable tax credits. That's what it's most people don't know that. They think it's just the IRS sending a check, but it's a mechanism that is used to get people that money. So it's going to be a big deal. Next week we'll be doing a lot of promotion about it, and then if people go online, there will be a portal where they can sign up and put their information if they didn't do it before, and that will get them the ball rolling so that they can get their payments. But in my district, about 134,000 kids will benefit from it. It's going to be a massive influx of money. A family of 4 will get $1,200 a month. That's a big difference. When I was growing up, my parents made no combined, even working 4 or 5 jobs a week with 6 kids, they only made about $38,000 at the height of their income. So it could be transformative for families. Now we're trying to make sure it's permanent, and it costs less. It actually saves money in the long term because more people get off of different programs if they're getting those checks and the monthly paid to them throughout their life.
No, absolutely. And I think we've all seen the numbers of the record amount of women who had to leave the workforce in the last year due to the pandemic and not having schools open and having to make a really difficult choice between caring for their children or going to work. So on behalf of all of the working moms and working parents out there, thank you so much for all your good work in this area.
And can I add something to that, Kathy? You bring up a great point. I know, my colleague mentioned that there's a lack of, these benefits are keeping people from going back to work. I have a staffer, and I can share it. She went on maternity leave, had a baby, and she couldn't find childcare. And so we had to delay her coming back until she got childcare. And she had to use also her husband, who has access to paid family leave, had to take off in order so she could come back. and we've provided her generous paid family leave, but that lack of childcare is a bigger issue than people think, and it's hard, right? Because it's almost like what came first, the chicken or the egg, or what came first, higher benefits are keeping people from going back to work as a childcare, and then childcare is going to have you don't have these childcare providers to be there, so that means that other people can't get back to work. It's sort of irrelevant in some respects. It's that the economy and the workforce is coming out of this lockdown, and it's not even, and it will work itself out, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a few months. I think by the fall, when hopefully we have schools open, people can drop their kids off at school, the economy will start and the workforce will start evening out.
Well, schools open is magic to my ears. I got just hearing you say schools open. Another topic you mentioned in your introductory remarks was infrastructure. So I was hoping that you can talk about the Americans Jobs Plan and what you think it means to, again, Los Angeles County. Are there specific projects or areas of infrastructure that you have in mind that you think that we would benefit from?
Yeah, no, thank you. So one of the things that I like when it comes to infrastructure, most people, the 6th Street Bridge that's getting replaced, or the 6th Street Viaduct, that's 90% federal money. And even a lot of the programs that the city of LA implemented, those were federal dollars, right? Through the rent relief program, the $100 million was from the CARES Act. The $243 million that's being used for the new rent relief, it's federal dollars. A lot of these programs, even at the state level, are federal dollars. So when it comes to what kind of impact it's going to be, it'll be massive. So you're looking at billions of dollars for housing. That's something that we're focusing on. We're trying to push. Some people don't believe housing should be considered in a package, but it's the #1 issue in this area. You're looking at one of the things where we realize, not only because of the census, which you saw low response rates to people going online to filling it out, but then also working class families had difficulty getting their children online. The digital divide, how real that is, how necessary it is to build that out. That is something that we're looking at. Transit, trying to get ready to help LA get ready for the Olympics. That is part of it. So there's a lot of components that we got to just invest. Water is huge. I often tell the people who ask about combating climate change, I always tell them, if you want to combat climate change, you got to deal with the water infrastructure here in California, because 20% of the energy consumption in California is from moving water from one part of the state to the other. You help kind of build up stormwater capture, you clean up the aquifer that's supposed to be done in the San Fernando Valley, you use some targeted desal, you do a bunch of little things. You can really build up our self-reliance on our own water sources and less reliance on moving water from one part of the state to the other. So it is huge. But then we have to not forget workforce development. We want to make sure people can take advantage of the jobs that will be created from this massive investment.
Yes, definitely. I think we have time for one more question. I did want you to talk about how the pandemic in general impacted your district, which is predominantly working class, a majority minority district. I'd like to say that unless you were here in LA during the whole pandemic, it was really hard to explain to people not living here how difficult it was to have everything closed, to be staying at home, to just living with that uncertainty. Many of us had people who got sick. Some folks lost some loved ones, which was very tragic. So I just like for you to just tell us a little bit about what you're trying to do for your constituents and helping them as we're coming into maybe not an entirely post-COVID world, but hopefully where we can control it. And specifically how the business community, members of VICA, can help and make sure that those communities are getting the services they need.
Yeah, no, the pandemic, in the early days, we're dealing with a lot of different crises all at once. We had the economy shutting down. You had people not going to be able to afford just basic living expenses. Kids had to come and study from home. And then a lot of the fact that my district, if you really look at it, is kind of a tale of two districts. You have the wealthy areas of Hancock Park and Mount Washington, certain buildings in downtown, and then at the same time, you have areas that a per capita income, a good Boyle Heights is about $28,000 a year. So it really, or actually even lower, I think it's about 14. So it, you had just this disparity in the district that was great. And then oftentimes the people that were higher income doing well could work from home. They still got that paycheck. They can help their kids connect online. But then you had the working class who had to make ends meet with what they had, that were desperate for cash coming into their account, since a lot of them don't have disposable resources, and oftentimes still had to go to work. So when I started seeing my staff, one of the things they would do would brief me on the infection rates, or first actually the test rates. It was actually the first thing was who's getting tested and infected in LA. Most of the tests were being done on the west side of LA, Brentwood, Westwood, in the early days. And I was trying to ring the alarm that you're gonna miss it. The COVID is gonna devastate the working class areas. But that was just a precursor, and we saw that. We saw that the infection rate was higher in minority community, it was higher in the Latino community, African American community, the working class areas, and the death rate. So we started pushing Gavin Newsom, the federal government, to focus in on the areas that were being disproportionately impacted by COVID, and they did that, and they had a good better results. They started turning those numbers around, but it was really kind of pushing for it. You know, we advocated for the FEMA site to be put in Cal State LA. They started, the city of LA started learning from implementing the different programs. The fact that you have to go online and put in an email address to get an appointment. Well, a lot of working class people, a lot of people who are immigrants don't have an email, and if they don't know how to go online to register to go and get a vaccine or to get tested. So we learned a lot of lessons, but I believe it was completely foreseeable in a lot of respects, because those problems were always there. They were kind of hidden by the fact that there wasn't an economic crisis or a healthcare crisis. But the minute there's a crisis, you see those same problems emerge. So for me, it was not anything new, but we've been getting better. Still, where are they lagging behind in vaccination rates? It's the Latino communities and the African American communities more acutely, right? So if we want to kind of slow the spread, you have to do kind of a targeted response directly into those communities to get people vaccinated, to stop the spread there. And it's, some folks think it's counterintuitive for some folks, but if there's a fire in one part, you want to put out that fire before it spreads to other communities. And that's how we're still focusing. But it's things are getting a lot better, but it's often the still minorities and kids that are now younger people that are getting sick from COVID and having some severe consequences.
Yeah, well, we're certainly doing our part to make sure that our employees have all the information they need. We've actually hosted vaccine clinics at City Walk. We've done some giveaways to try to incentivize folks to get vaccinated. But to your point, yeah, I had to actually make my parents' vaccine appointments because they could not navigate that website. And I did go to that Cal OES site at Cal State LA to get vaccinated. So thank you for that.
Oh, good.
Good. I think that's all the time we have. Thank you, Congressman, for joining us. It was great to see you virtually. I hope to get to see you in person soon. Yeah. And I think I'm turning it over now to Mark Taylor from the Bowen Company.
And Kathy, one last thing. So,
sure.
So that VICA and everybody knows, everybody always talks about how, you know, California is on its last legs. We're going to go off the cliff. And California has big problems because we're a big state, and it takes a while to turn that ship around. But once we do, we get things going. The whole myth about the California exodus, it is a myth. There was a UC report that was just released. We're gonna turn it around, and we're gonna be stronger than ever. And I know that's because we have a strong, engaged business community, nonprofit community, and even an activist community that everybody's engaged. Not easy. Democracy is never easy, and when it comes to the size of California, things are just so much harder. But I have faith that we're going to have a strong 2021, but even a stronger 2022. So see you soon, and see you in person.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Appreciate you, the handoff. I also appreciate hearing from Congress members Garcia, Gomez, and Sherman. Really appreciate them taking some time to be with us today. Boeing Company is happy to join some great companies today and sponsoring this event. And I'm delighted that I get the opportunity to introduce someone who I've known for a long time. We won't say how long to protect the guilty, but I would like to introduce and hope that everyone on the call today will join in a warm virtual welcome for Congressmember John Garamendi. Congressman? They don't see him on screen.
Congressman, you need to turn on your microphone. It's at the bottom of the screen.
I was just gonna say, Stuart, you're not the congressman, but thanks for the technical help.
Are we on?
There he is.
Here I am.
Hey, Congressman, good to see you again. How are you?
Good to be with you, Mark. We do go back a ways. We won't tell anybody how long because, well, we just say it's a ways. Delighted to be with you. Delighted to be with VICA.
For some opening remarks, sir.
Sure. I was just trying to remember the last time I met with VICA. I think I was with the governor, and we were meeting somewhere near the studios there in the Valley. But that was a good 11 years ago. And I've been in Congress since 2009, having left the Lieutenant Governor's office. I got to tell you, I love my work. I've always been into public policy issues. The more complex, the more I like it. And Washington, there is no shortage of very, very complex issues. Serving on the House Armed Services Committee, spend a lot of time talking about Boeing issues from time to time, and also on the transportation infrastructure. I was listening to Jimmy Gomez talk about infrastructure, so I won't go into that too much, but I'm going to kind of set a foundation here, a foundation that I laid for my policy development back in 1985. I was in the Senate, California Senate at the time. I was all of us were concerned about Japan taking over California. They were making heavy investments. Japan government was ripping and roaring. And so I asked to do a select committee on the future of California. And so we set it up, hired a group of economists, SRI International, and did a study. And we actually did more history than future. We said, how did California succeed? What were the keys? And there were 5 things that were developed in that study. And I've carried those 5 things all this time. First, the best education system in the world. We're off the mark in California. Higher education still is the best, but K through 12, really not so. Community colleges, very good. Probably better than any place else in the nation. But we got a real problem with K through 12. The pandemic didn't help at all. I'm going to take that back. It may very well be the pandemic helped a great deal because it caused change. So we'll see how all of that turns out. Hopefully it'll be for the better. The second thing was you had to have the best research institutions in the world. California still does. From the universities to the laboratories, the federal and other labs, we do have a great research. Thirdly, you have to make things, preferably make things that come out of those research institutions. That's the new technology. Those are the things that have the high margin because nobody else is making them. Eventually things become a commodity. And so you want, we still will have the You always want to go for the new coming out of the research institutions. Fourth, you have to have the best infrastructure. And that was what you just discussed: streets, roads, trains, transit, airports, all of that. Also the water systems, Jimmy talked about that. I can go back in that in detail if you like. But also Jimmy mentioned the information infrastructure, broadband, other access. I'm actually at my ranch at the moment, and if I lose you, I will curse the carrier, probably publicly, as I've done many, many times. But the reality is that our information connections are not good. Broadband is not widely available, either urban and rural. So that kind of infrastructure is part of it. And finally, you have to be international. You got to pay attention to the international, and that's always a discussion point. Some of that is found in international trade agreements. If only we had been able to maintain the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TTP, we would be in much better shape for our commerce, our international commerce, but also much, much better shape for our international security, and particularly having even closer ties with the trade allies in the Pacific. So anyway, those were the 5 things. And as I go through the legislative process in Washington, I keep coming back to those. What are we doing to enhance any one of those 5? And the answer is, in this last year and a half, there's been extraordinary progress. A lot of the old handcuffs were removed, and the federal government stepped forward and really put a vast amount of money into all 5 of those areas. We have more to do. The big infrastructure bill is hopefully going to be completed before the end of the fiscal year, September. Maybe the Senate will send the physical infrastructure back to us in the next couple of weeks. Beyond that, what was known as soft infrastructure, keep in mind what I told you: education, job training, a different kind of education, but nonetheless, that's in that soft infrastructure. Jimmy talked about that. Also, the research piece of it. Did anybody know that the Senate has passed a $250 billion soft infrastructure legislation? 150 billion of that $250 billion legislation passed by the Senate, soft infrastructure, was specifically for research. Another 100 billion was for industrial policy. And it wasn't called infrastructure. It wasn't called soft infrastructure. It wasn't called Biden's plan, although it was. It was called competing with China. So the lesson learned here: how do you label your legislation? So we're well on the way to one of the major soft infrastructure pieces, the research, and then the industrial policy to go with that. So I'm going to let it go at that. Looking for Q&A, Mark. Good to see you on the screen. Look forward to that real cup of coffee.
Great. Thanks for your opening remarks, sir. Pleasure to hear from you. And I can attest, you are one of the more consistent folks on Congress and always come back to your values, which is something I respect. First question is, California is home to nearly 4 million small businesses that employ over 7 million Californians. What can we do to ensure that those businesses recover as we're coming out of COVID-19?
For the previous 18 months, principally for 2020, the goal was, I say for the previous 18 months, all of the COVID legislation involved, and some of it was specifically oriented to that. The rescue bill, the most recent $1.5 trillion plus, was specifically oriented to small businesses. The programs were initially developed in the spring and early summer of 2020. The PPP programs and the Small Business Administration programs. The initial effort out of those really benefited mid-sized and large corporations. It didn't get down to the small businesses. The second iteration of that COVID relief program was oriented towards small businesses, and it seemed to work. The goal was let them survive, just survive, so that you have another day sometime in the future to start up and get, not to start up, but to get back to the former pace that you were on, or to grow. I think it worked. As we learned about the effects of the shutdowns, we added to it. The theater, small venues, individual businesses, the new economy, single individuals working individually in the gig economy. So those things were added along the way. There's a lot of money that has not yet been spent in those programs, and they do continue. For every one of the members of Congress that you've had on can assist any of the small businesses in the Valley or beyond that are listening or in your network to get assistance along the way. Going forward, assuming they survived, the economy is bouncing back. It reminds me of one of those old paddle boards that we used to play with. It's like somebody hit the paddle board and it is just slinging out there very, very fast. Another analogy is it's a fast start at a stop sign. And there's a lot of catch up. There's a lot of burnt rubber. There's a lot of companies that are unable to perform as quickly as they would like or as the economy might need. So we've had some very significant supply chain problems. Those seem to be lessening as companies are coming back up to higher speed. We'll probably be that with another 4 to 6 months. And then hopefully we'll pick up a very fast pace, as most economists seem to think we will.
Great. Thanks, sir. On behalf of VICA, I want to commend you for the work that you did in securing direct relief for restaurants through the Restaurant Revitalization Fund back in May. Restaurants are, of course, a cornerstone of communities, a huge employment driver. Do you have a plan to expand this relief to additional industries?
As may be necessary. What happened with the restaurant industry was that the old mainline, well, I'll probably upset somebody here, but so be it. The old mainline lobbying organization was a little slow. And so the small entrepreneurial restaurants got together, formed their own organization, and quickly ramped up to be a major force politically, but more importantly, with information about really the disaster that was occurring, and that the industry, the smaller independent operations would not be able to restart. They simply were going to disappear. So yes, that was a major part of the rescue bill that was put together. And I'd be a little political. We didn't get any Republican votes for that. So I'll just let that hang out there.
All right, thank you, sir. I want to just thank you on behalf of Boeing, because I know you're a big supporter of American manufacturing. In fact, the last time you and I were chatting, it was with some suppliers that were in your district that support the SLS and our great space program. So I just want to thank you. I know you're a champion of manufacturing, and so I asked this question with that spirit in mind, which is, what can we do to protect the manufacturing base here in California and keep us from shedding jobs to other states or even either other countries?
Let's take nationwide first and then bring it back to California. Since my very first day in Congress, I've been on the Make It in America agenda. It really started with the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. I was lieutenant governor, and we were talking about getting that bridge repaired and so on and so forth. And the result was about $1 billion program. The issue of where was the steel going to come from was out there, and China outbid a domestic steel manufacturer 10% cheaper. Turned out at the end of the day that it wasn't 10% cheaper, it was probably 10% more expensive, because there were problems with the quality of the steel and also a whole lot of construction issues associated with it. So I got really bent out of shape, because the steel was bent out of shape, and decided that Make It in America would be one of my principal agendas in Washington. And I've been driving it ever since. A lot of pieces along the way Mark, you mentioned the defense industry. We've ramped up the defense industry. In the last NDAA, I put in an amendment that said that the U.S. military, unless it was impossible, had to purchase its fuel from American refineries and had to be delivered on American ships. You know, little things mean a lot. We have another program underway for the transportation. Instead of broad waivers, we've tightened it up. Waivers will still be possible. Right now, the construction industry is not too happy with me because I said we're going to use American-made material. If we're going to rebuild our highways and bridges, we're going to use American-made material. Well, we can do it. Yes, it may be that your preferred option was to import sand from British Columbia, but there are sand pits in California. So that's one whole thing. We're using the federal, this is what Biden said, actually after a conversation with him. He said, hang on. He said that American taxpayer dollars ought to be used buying American services, goods, and equipment. And we're driving that into legislation and into the law now. For California, it's to participate in this effort. I'll give you one very specific one. A lot of people want to talk about China controlling the rare earth market, and they do. They actually threatened in one of the trade disputes with Trump to stop all rare earth sales to America. Well, that would shut down the electric industry in America, from batteries to motors and on and on. So what we are doing is we are building the American supply chain using the Defense Production Act and other laws as may be appropriate. The largest rare earth mine in America is in Imperial County.
Yes, it is.
3 times that mine has opened, produced, and then went bankrupt. Why? Because China used its power to undercut the market so that the mine failed. And then China tried to buy the mine. Fortunately, that didn't happen. We're on the 3rd iteration now. Hopefully it will start up, operate. However, now the material coming from that mine has to be sent to China for processing. We're missing something here. The industrial policy bill that the Senate passed is specifically to address those kind of issues, providing the necessary federal support, loan guarantees, whatever, so that those kind of programs can move forward. You're going to see an expansion in the days ahead of the SBA programs, loan guarantee programs. There's a host of other federal loan guarantee programs, some of which are in place as a result of the previous laws. In every case, I urge your participants here, reach out to the members of Congress in their area, reach out to the SBA, scroll the websites, the government websites, the Department of U.S. Department of Agriculture, $307 million of grants and loans for specific programs. These are community programs, water sanitation programs, but they also have programs for manufacturing. One of the largest manufacturing sectors in California is the agricultural food manufacturing sector. Anyway, those things are there. Contact us. All of us can direct and help provide openings and opportunities.
Great. Thank you, sir. I think we have time for one last question. And I know that, one of your biggest priorities, we've talked a lot about it today, in fact, is jobs. What else do you think we can do and need to do, frankly, so that businesses can expand and grow as we're coming out of this crisis?
Well, the employment base is really important. One of the things we've all learned is we're going to need to know technology. Wherever you are, I'm going to go back to what most people think is the most basic of technologies, agriculture. My current district is a huge agricultural district. It's 199 miles of the Sacramento River. A modern farm, even a small modern farm, has to use technology, irrigation technology. Most of the tractors are now using GPS so that the rows are very, very straight. And the tractor automatically stops when it comes up to the ditch at the end of the road. So those kinds of things are all there. That's a repair also. So the machinery needs to be repaired. That means somebody needs to be educated to do that. There's also a very, very important immigration issue here, particularly for California. Trump basically shut down the visas for individuals with advanced education. For a long time, I and others, probably many of you on this call, have called for, if you get an advanced degree in California, if you got a master's degree or a PhD, stapled to that diploma is a green card. So these are the things that really are going to be important for California's future, is to make sure that our workforce is well educated for all the things. You're not going to go down to Boeing and work on those high-tech engines that you're building for United Launch unless you understand how to operate and repair that computer-assisted machine tool. So these are the things that are out there. Finally, just a word about water. Jimmy went into this. I'm going to cover this very, very quickly. Jimmy was absolutely correct. And over the 40 years that I've been fighting with Southern California over water, it's time to compliment Southern California. Southern California is way ahead of the nation in recycling and in conservation. You're doing a terrific job wherever you happen to be. Jimmy mentioned the aquifers in the San Fernando Valley. The aquifers in Southern California, San Fernando, San Gabriel, Santa Ana, on and on. Those aquifers have more storage capacity than Shasta Reservoir. And they are now being used as recycled water is pumped into it, taken out, cleaned, recycled, and put back. There's 1 million acre-feet of additional water available in Southern California now, with the extension of the programs that you have been using in Southern California for the last 2 decades. Go for it. And on the federal side, we're going to pump a lot more money in so that you can do a lot more of that. The Colorado River is in very dry trouble. Northern California is in current dry trouble, and it may be an extended drought for more than a decade. You may, those of you that are interested in ancient America, why did the Anasazis leave the Pueblos? I'll let that hang out there. If you want to contact me, if anybody knows, they can answer the question. But it also coincides with a period of time when Lake Tahoe was 50 feet lower than it is today.
Wow.
And full-grown trees are now 20 to 30 feet below the current level of the lake. Okay, answer. Between 1000 and 1200 AD, there was a 200-year drought.
Wow.
Coincides with those trees in Lake Tahoe, coincides with the Anasazis leaving the Pueblos. So climate change augments and worsens all of that. Mark, it's a pleasure.
Thanks, sir. On behalf of the Boeing Company and VICA, I just want to thank you for being here. And personally, it's a pleasure to see you again. I always enjoy getting a chance to visit with you and appreciate your long service to the state of California, sir. Thank you. And now it's my pleasure to hand things off to Brad Rosenheim from Rosenheim & Associate and the chair of VICA, who will close us out for today.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. I really appreciate it. And thank you to our Congress members for joining us today. It's really tremendous to get the insights that they share with us about the federal issues and all the changes that are occurring at this time. I also want to thank Allison, Cameron, Kathy, and Mark. You did a great job and appreciate your attention to the details. And as we always want to thank our sponsors, especially today, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power and Comcast NBC Universal. Before we leave, I get to do the raffle. I'm going to pick the numbers and hopefully win. So 5 and 55. 5 for Southwest airline tickets and 55 for a Brent's Deli certificate. Staff's going to figure out who the winners are and then let me know. And in the meantime, I just want to encourage all of you to attend our August 18th VICA Back to Work After Dark. It will begin at 5:30 and it will be at the Burbank Airport Marriott. And please wear your best Hawaiian shirt or dress, Stuart. And I hope you can make it. It will be great to see everybody back in person. And now for the winners. The winner of the Southwest Airline ticket is Christy Hernandez. Congratulations, Christy. And the winner for Brent's is Barry Cohn. So congratulations to both of you. Jessica will be back in touch with you early next week to get you your prizes. And I want to thank everybody today for being here. The platform will stay open until 2 o'clock if you'd like to stick around and network. And again, thank you to our sponsors, our Congress members, and all of you for joining us today. Take care, drive safely, have a great weekend. Thank you.